The moment he spoke, the entire studio fell silent. It wasn't power, it was pain, and the world felt it. During a tense and highly anticipated live interview, Piers Morgan was ready for confrontation. He had his facts, his questions, and his trademark glare locked in. His guest? Ibrahim Traoré, the young, fearless president of Burkina Faso's transitional government. Piers was known for grilling, not listening. He was set to corner Traoré, to make him stumble on live television. The cameras blinked red. The countdown echoed. 3, 2, 1. Tonight, Piers began, his tone pointed. We're joined by a man some call a revolutionary, and others say is dangerously bold. President Ibrahim Traoré, welcome. Traoré nodded, calm and composed. Not defensive, not flustered, just rooted in a stillness that unsettled even his toughest critics. Without pause, Piers leaned in. You've made decisions that have cost lives. You've distanced yourself from former allies. Some argue you're playing with fire. Do you feel no guilt? Or do you simply hide it well? The tension tightened. You could feel it across the screen. Traoré didn't blink. He looked directly at Piers and said quietly, "Do you really want to know?" Even Piers paused at the gravity behind those 5 simple words. Viewers leaned in. There was something in Traoré's voice raw, unfiltered, honest. The silence stretched longer than expected. Piers, slightly unsettled, cleared his throat. "Yes," he said, less confrontational this time. "Tell me. Don't pretend you've got no regrets." Traoré folded his hands. His gaze didn't waver. He let out a soft breath. "My regret," he said, "is not what you think it is." His words were quiet but carved through the room like stone. Piers raised an eyebrow, waiting, challenging him to go further. And then Traoré's voice cracked, just slightly. "My regret," he said again, "is that there are still children who look at me like I failed to protect them." The entire studio froze. Piers' next question never made it past his lips. On social media, that single line was already echoing. Children who look at me as though I failed them. For the first time that night, Piers' stern expression began to soften. And for a moment, Ibrahim Traoré looked like he was holding back tears himself. No follow-up question came. Piers set his pen down and leaned back, unsure of what to say next. But Traoré continued, his voice steady, but weighed down by emotion. "I see their faces every night," he said. "In refugee camps, on streets torn by bullets. Children with empty eyes asking, why? Why did we allow this to happen to them?" He stopped briefly. "I have no answer that feels worthy of them. Not yet." The room fell into a reverent hush. Even the crew behind the cameras stood still. Piers wasn't interrogating anymore. He was listening. Truly listening. "How do you carry that?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Traoré closed his eyes for a breath, then opened them again. They shimmered, but held strong. "Because if I don't carry it," he said, "who will?" Candace Owens, seated just off camera, was caught in a close-up. She bit her lip, visibly, holding back emotion. Her voice trembled as she whispered into her mic, "I've never heard this before." Millions watching shared that same feeling. Then came the harder questions, the kind Piers was infamous for. He leaned in once again, his energy returning. "You talk about sacrifice, Mr. Traoré," he said. "But your country's economy is hurting. You've turned down foreign military help. You've broken with major global powers. Are you truly doing this for your people, or is this just about personal pride?" The studio stirred uncomfortably. Even Traoré's translator appeared uneasy. But Traoré remained still, calm as the first light of morning. For a long moment, he said nothing. And then, gently, "Do you think I sleep peacefully while children cry?" The words struck with force. Piers halted. The studio turned still. Viewers everywhere felt the silence. Traore straightened his jacket, took a breath, and continued. This was no longer an interview. This was something sacred. The camera zoomed slowly toward his face. His voice stayed low, firm, but laced with sorrow. One morning, he said, I stood outside a burned-down school. A little girl, maybe 6, stood clutching her brother's hand. He stopped briefly, swallowed, but he was already gone. She didn't know. She kept repeating, he's sleeping. He's sleeping. The studio fell silent. If stories like this move you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Let's make sure the world listens. Traore's voice quivered slightly. She looked up at me and asked if I could wake him. He paused again, his eyes wet. And I couldn't, he whispered. I couldn't. A quiet gasp rose from the crowd. Even Piers didn't interrupt. I carry her eyes with me, Traore continued. I carry the gaze of every child who's begged me to fix something I haven't yet been able to. And that's why I continue. Not for myself, not for pride, but because I can't face another little girl asking me to wake someone I can't bring back. Piers stared, his pen forgotten. No one had prepared for this, not even him. And for the first time ever, he was speechless. His notes, useless. The cameras kept rolling, and Ibrahim Traoré simply sat there composed, still, hands folded. There was no applause, just quiet tears, 1,000 eyes, refusing to look away. Online, one sentence shattered the internet. Do you think I sleep peacefully while children cry? Comment sections exploded. This is real leadership. I've never cried during an interview until now. Even Piers, normally in control, cleared his throat, struggling. His voice came low, cracked. How do you keep going? He asked, when it feels like the weight of the world is yours alone? Traore gave a faint, tired smile. And what he said next left the world in tears. The tears shimmered in his eyes, but he never looked away. The studio held its breath. You could almost hear hearts beating. Piers leaned back slowly in his chair, visibly shaken. His lips parted, barely moving as he whispered more to himself than anyone else. I've never heard anything like this. That single line, soft and stunned, rang through the studio like a bell in a cathedral. Even the crew behind the cameras stood frozen in place. And around the world, millions watching felt something break open inside them. The cameras kept rolling, but inside the studio, no one moved. Even the makeup artist in the far corner had stopped, silently holding a tissue to her cheek. Ibrahim Traoré's voice still lingered in the air, like a prayer that refused to end. I've sacrificed myself, he had said. And somehow, the silence afterwards said even more. Piers looked at him, now not with the sharpness he was known for, but with something softer. His usual fire had dimmed into quiet awe. For the first time, he wasn't interrogating. He was listening. Do you ever regret it? He asked, gently. Traore took a deep breath, his shoulders visibly heavy. I regret that they still suffer, he said. I regret that I haven't done enough yet. But how can I regret standing here? If I step aside, who will stand for them? In the crowd, tissues rose to faces. One by one, the audience wiped tears. Even the cameraman's hands were shaking. For once in his long career, Piers Morgan didn't interrupt. He just sat silent, still like everyone else. At home, viewers clutched their chests, their hearts aching as they realized this wasn't politics. This was something far more human, far more important. From the back of the room, a whisper rose, just loud enough to be heard. He's telling the truth. No one knew who said it, but it didn't matter, because that one sentence cracked something wide open. The studio began to stir. Quiet murmurs turned to nods. People began to cry openly, without shame. Traore's eyes scanned the room. In the second row, a young woman sat crying into her sleeve, mascara streaking down her cheeks. He noticed. And so did Piers. And for the first time all night, Piers Morgan broke character. He turned to the crowd and asked, "When you look at him, what do you see?" A man stood slowly, voice trembling. "I see someone who cares more about strangers than most of our own leaders care about us." There was no applause, just deeper silence, the kind that doesn't demand noise. Traore didn't speak. He didn't need to. He sat still, hands folded, letting their voices speak for once. One by one, people rose from their seats, calling him a hero, calling him hope. Piers just sat there, lips trembling, trying to hold back everything that had built up inside him. And then the final question came, but not from him. It came through his earpiece, from the director. "We're out of time. Wrap it up." But Piers didn't move. He just stared at Traore for a long, silent moment, then finally asked in a near whisper, "If the whole world was listening right now, what would you say?" The room froze again. The camera zoomed in. Traore looked straight into the lens, his face steady, his tone calm. But his words cut through everything. "The people you ignore today will be the ones who bury your children tomorrow. So choose love. Choose them. Choose humanity before it's too late." And then nothing. No one spoke. No one moved. The air itself seemed to stop. Piers blinked fast, unable to speak, his throat tight. He only nodded, defeated, moved, changed. Within minutes, the clip hit the internet. By nightfall, it was everywhere. The sentence that shook the world, the headlines read. People cried as they watched, over and over. The studio lights dimmed as the show ended. And then, nothing. No one spoke. No one moved. The air itself seemed to stop. Piers blinked fast, unable to speak, his throat tight. He only nodded, defeated, moved, changed. Within minutes, the clip hit the internet. By nightfall, it was everywhere. The sentence that shook the world, the headlines read. People cried as they watched, over and over. The studio lights dimmed as the show ended, but outside, something had already started. Something real. Clips of Traore's piercing words flooded every platform. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Hashtags like #TruthBeforePolitics and #TRA or EAcute speaks trended worldwide. And across languages, cultures, and continents, his words echoed. "The people you ignore today will bury your children tomorrow. So choose love." Back in the studio, Piers didn't leave. He just sat there, hands clasped, staring at the table. For once, the man who usually chewed his guests up had no words left. Around him, phones rang, producers rushed, audience members shuffled out, wiping their eyes. But outside, on the quiet streets of London, Ibrahim Traoré stepped into the night unnoticed for only a moment, until a woman stopped him, clutched his hand, looked into his eyes and whispered, "Thank you. I'll never forget tonight." He gave her a small, tired smile and kept walking. But deep down, even he could feel it. He had just lit something far greater than himself. And in the streets of Burkina Faso that same night, radios buzzed, TVs flickered, and families gathered close, watching their president not as a politician, but as a voice, as a mirror, as a man who had finally been heard. They poured into the streets, shouting his name through the rain. "He spoke for us," they cried. He told them the truth. The voices echoed off walls, rising like thunder through Ouagadougou. In a modest home nearby, Ibrahim Traoré's mother watched quietly, her eyes fixed on a small, flickering television screen. The clip of her son's interview was playing. She didn't speak. She just wiped a tear that slipped down her cheek, then folded her hands, bowed her head. and whispered a prayer for the boy she had raised. She reached for her phone and typed a message with steady fingers. "My son, you've carried our pain into the light. Be strong. We are with you." In his London hotel room, Traore sat on the edge of the bed, the soft blue light of his phone screen illuminating his face. He read her message once. Then again, his calm cracked. He lowered his head into his hands and let the tears come quietly, painfully. Tears for the people he still couldn't save. For the mothers who still sit at their doors, waiting for sons that won't return. For the children whose stomachs growl with hunger, even as the world turns its face away. And for just a moment, just one breath, he wondered, was it enough? But then he stood, slowly, silently. He wiped his eyes, straightened his coat, and turned toward the window. The city below bustled with life cars honking, children laughing, strangers crossing paths. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. He felt hope, not for himself, but for them. The very next morning, as he zipped up his coat to leave, his phone buzzed. Piers Morgan. His voice, when it came through the line, was soft or uncertain, almost apologetic. "Ibrahim." He hesitated. "I just wanted to say, thank you." There was a long pause. "You didn't just speak to me last night. You spoke to everyone. And I'd like you to come back. There's more the world needs to hear from you." Traore was quiet for a beat. Then he replied, "Thank you, Piers. I'll come back. But only if you're ready to hear, not just to ask." The line stayed silent. Then finally, Piers whispered, "I'm ready." Traore hung up the call and moved to the window. Outside, the clouds still hung low, but the city was alive. Alive with noise, with people, with stories, with second chances. That evening, Ibrahim Traoré walked once more into the studio. Outside the building, a growing crowd waited, umbrellas in hand, signs raised. "You speak for us. Truth still matters." "Thank you, Ibrahim." This time, it wasn't hostility that greeted him at the door. It was something closer to reverence. Piers Morgan met him there, not as an opponent, but as a man changed. His eyes were red. His voice was gentler. As they walked together down the corridor toward the studio, Traore passed the glowing lights, the camera rigs, the hushed crew. He paused briefly before stepping on set. And in that moment, behind closed eyes, he saw them. Farmers digging through dry earth, children with hunger in their eyes, mothers still praying for peace. His people. When the doors opened and he stepped under the bright, blinding lights once again, the room fell completely still. This wasn't just another interview. This was a reckoning. The segment began. Piers leaned forward, voice thick. "You spoke last time about humanity. But tell me, Mr. Traoré, why does it even matter if the world listens? People don't change." There was a silence that pulled everyone in. Traore's hands were still, his eyes steady. Then he answered, softly, "Because even if they don't change, you can." Piers blinked, stunned. The words dropped into the air like a stone into still water. In the front row, someone gasped. A young woman wiped her cheeks, mascara streaking down. Traore continued, "Change doesn't begin with the world. It begins with you, one heart at a time." Silence. Not empty silence, sacred silence. Piers lowered his gaze, unable to speak. In homes across the globe, people sat still, phones forgotten in their hands, tears falling freely. In that single breath of a moment, the noise of politics fell away, and something real took its place. When the cameras cut, the studio didn't. Erupt in applause. They rose. They cried. They felt. People reached out just to touch him, to shake his hand, to say thank you. Piers approached slowly, voice breaking. Thank you, Ibrahim. I'll never forget this. Traore gave him a faint smile. It's not about me, Piers, he said. It's about what you do next. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The air was clean. The sky, a gentle gray. The same crowd that had waited earlier stood there still, some with tears, some with signs, all with hearts that had just been cracked open. Traore waved. Not like a politician, but like a man who knew what it meant to carry other people's pain. He couldn't fix everything. Not in a day. Not in a speech. But tonight, he had planted something. A seed that might grow, even in the hardest soil, even in the hardest hearts. If this story touched your heart, brought you to tears, or reminded you of something deeply human, don't just scroll. Click like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what parts stayed with you. Let's keep this conversation alive. Truth over politics. Humanity over headlines. They carried their silence. And in that silence, the world finally heard something louder than war. Truth, love, and the pain we've all ignored for too long.